Before we move on to the final videos on object-oriented programming, I wanted to take you through a quick summary of everything that you've done so far to build this content management system. Now, what we've done to get to this point is something similar to what most of the CMSs out there that have been established for a long period of time have done. They began this way, basically starting with the problem of how do we make it easy to work with content, and how do we allow people who can't code or can't build websites to be able to still build and manipulate their site. This ended up being a great way to learn PHP, but hopefully it also gives you some insight into the challenges you face when actually building a system that allows people to work with content. So we have a pretty good framework so far, but still we're touching on just the very surface of what a CMS can potentially do. In Drupal, for example, you can allow the end user to add fields to a content type. Now, if we wanted to add fields to a content type through this system, we would need to add a column directly to a database table, and then we would need to manipulate a set of configuration options in a file. So we both have to touch the database directly and the file system directly in order to do that. But Drupal has advanced to a point where the end user can do all of that without touching either of those places. They can do it right there in the browser. Drupal can also handle issues like URL redirects, like what happens if we move our page to another URL and we have things pointing to the original URL. And Drupal has a permission system, which allows you to have multiple users that can edit different types of content and potentially even different pieces of each one of those types of content. So far, our CMS doesn't allow us to do that. What we have accomplished, though, is significant when it comes to managing our own websites and working with clients. From here, we can have a consistent single code base that we use for all of our sites, and as we add features and fix bugs in one site, we can cascade those to the other sites using something like version control. The thing is that our code base is flexible enough now to support different types of content, and because the bulk of our content is in the database, that code base can be shared between different sites. As I mentioned early on in this series, this is something that a lot of developers do as they're working their way to actually adopting another CMS. This is the process I personally went through. I built a fairly complicated content management system in order to consolidate the work I was doing for various clients. So I could, for example, build a calendar system for one client, but then be able to offer it to other clients as well without any additional work. But at some point, I reached the limitations of what I could do by myself in my content management system, and I started looking elsewhere to see if I could find help from other people. And that led me to discover that there were multiple CMSs that had already gone down this route. The CMS we've built here hasn't yet evolved to a modular system, so if we wanted to add a new feature like a calendar, we don't have a system to be able to plug that into some of our sites, but not other sites. When a content management system becomes mature, it includes that modular system to allow you to both combine the work of other people into a single project, but also to allow you to turn off and on various features for different client projects.